alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederriter. I'm your host for Alive After Reading, the podcast about books and fiction. And usually I talk to authors, but today, as my series continues in this December of 2020, I am reading from some stories, but this is different. This time is going to be a little different. The past I read The Passage to Dilfar by Roger Zelazny, and I read some flash fiction, and I read some poetry that I partially composed, but it was all found poetry, so it was all written by other people originally, and then I edited it to make them into poems. Well, today things are different because I'm reading from my own work. I'm going to be reading from 3 different stories, and so these are each they're different genres. Well, the first 2 are fantasy. Oh, the first one is fantasy. Sorry. Jeez, I'm awful. But you see, I mean, you tell we do this live and the show's good because I'm natural. And this is how I talk all the time, so it's fine. But anyway, the first one is fantasy. The next one is science fiction. It will be in media res. And the last one is fantasy again, from a different story. But both of these fantasy stories would be epic fantasies, and all these books are unreleased. So I would like you to tell me which of these excerpts you like the best. I will say the name of the book, the working title of the book at the beginning of each excerpt, and then get into it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I will see you on the other side of the first reading, which is Fate's Ransom. One, Zulin Va. Shimmering essence light bathed the scene of carnage and destruction in the wake of the battle. 2 void ships lay shattered on the stony plain. A 3rd vessel remained intact, hovering a few hundred yards over the broken ground. On the victorious side, adrenaline slowing at last, Zulin gazed over the wreckage of the squabbling began. She rested her saber's blunt side upon her arm. The weapon was freshly cleaned of the foe's blood, its metal cold to the touch, even through her uniform's sleeve. 2 lines of bloody and beaten prisoners stretched for 100 yards before her, awaiting assessment. The quartermasters needed to tally their worth for ransom. With funds low, the company needed to squeeze every Athrian crown from the spoils of battle. The senior quartermaster raised her gnarled hand and motioned with one bent finger for Zulin to lead the first prisoner forward. He was sandy-haired, with a light shade of tawny skin common in the upper strands of Ea. His dark eyes fixed on Zulin, reflecting the glimmer of light from the essence lights behind her. "Give me my freedom or kill me now," the man hissed as Zulin approached him. "I have neither option," Zulin shook her head. "You've lost the fight, Athrian, but we of Kipir don't execute prisoners of war." He spat at her feet. "Drone on, then. You think I don't understand my position? Then why pretend defiance?" She reached for his bound wrists. He grunted as she pushed him toward the floating palanquin, a circular platform 2 yards in diameter the quartermaster sat upon. Ethereal spirit sprites allowed the disc of stone to float at the command of whoever sat upon it. Before the palanquin, Zulin forced the man's knees to bend, and he sank to the rocky ground. The senior quartermaster leaned over the edge of the palanquin and blinked her rheumy eyes. At over 100 cycles old, Mogray Layat was among the oldest members of the 10th Traveler Company. Despite her advanced years and fading sight, she remained the finest mind for numbers in the entire unit. Her mouth curled into a smile, one of the few times Zulin had ever witnessed the senior quartermaster display any emotion at all. "We are in luck, brothers and sisters. This man has the face of the jagged Odwar." Mogray's beaming eyes flashed. She nodded at the sandy-haired prisoner with her long officer's cane. Prodded at the sandy-haired prisoner with her long officer's cane. "Are you not? Answer me, Athrian." The prisoner glared at Mogray, teeth gritted tight. "Your face tells me some things, but I need your voice for the rest." Mogray's smile faded away, leaving her usual cold demeanor behind. Zulin leaned over the man and whispered in his ear, "Things will go better for you if you give your name quickly." "You witless Capirians don't deserve to hear my name," he said. "Give me a blade and I'll teach you why." "You held a blade before," said Mogray. "I saw you in the fighting, boy. Now tell me your name." "No." The Atherian's eyes narrowed. You've gotten all you will from me. Zulin Va, said the senior quartermaster, divine his nature, now. Zulin bowed her head to Mowgray. She raised her hand and pressed it to the back of the Atherian's head. The man squirmed but could not escape. One of her seeking essences dived into his mind, leaving no trace in his scalp, then quickly returned with the same subtlety. The sensation Zulin received from her essence made her step back from the prisoner, and as her eyes widened. He isn't the Jagad Odwar, Zulin looked at Mowgray. He's Radosk Odwar, the Jagad's son. Well done, Zulin, said Mowgray. Radosk, do you know the ransom your father will pay for you? You'll get no gold from my family, Radosk grunted. I won't let you send me away from my troops. In good time, your mind must change, Mowgray sighed. A pity. We could use a princely ransom right now. Zulin frowned as she mulled the information her sprites retrieved from Radosk. He's telling the truth, though. His father won't pay to ransom him because he tried to stop Radosk from joining the legions. Radosk twisted it where he knelt, his eyes wild. How dare you read my mind? It's not at all like reading, said Mowgray. The Gari have other ways of deciphering your identity. Be still, Radosk Odwar. Zulin only did as I ordered, though I doubt you placed much value on that kind of honor. The man clenched his jaw. Let me go or kill me then. You know I'm of no value to you. Not in crowns, no. Mowgray motioned with her cane to the two members of the full guard cadre where they stood beside the palanquin. Sahi, Budo, take a prison launch and return this man to the flagship. We'll find something to do with him, I'm certain. Zulin Va, go with them. Zulin bowed her head. With respect, senior quartermaster, there are many others to value. Trust my orders, Zulin Va, said Mowgray. And that's the excerpt from the beginning of Fate's Ransom. Jeez, this is a work in progress, of course, and there were some typos in there that threw me off. But regardless, I'm pretty happy with that scene. I think it's pretty fun. I enjoyed it. But what do you think? Let me know. And hopefully I'm not reading too quickly here. That was about 800 words, and I read it in about 5 minutes. That seems about right. That seems fair. Maybe I'll try to slow down for the next one, though. This one is from a book called Armored Knight. Or Cyber Knight. Yeah, Cyber Knight. Jeez. The titles change, right? Cyber Knight. That's the one. And it is cyberpunk with a military bent. And this scene takes place later in the book, toward the end, toward the climax. So here we go. Cyber Knight. The Old Highway, west of Cairo. 1600 hours, February 24th, 2079. Stinger took the light transport racing out of the city along the potholed, wind-worn, old stretch of road curving between Cairo and forward operating base Mirage. This late in the day, he would have expected to feel excited, even euphoric, speeding along a desolate highway, turned from black to brown by the sand blowing from the desert. Such freedom and exhilaration came easily with his company at his back. A man could get used to that, professional or not. The dark shape of Weapon D sitting beside him in the cabin ruined everything. For a supposedly higher life form, D seemed cold, almost reptilian thanks to his sleek, dragon-scale armor and dark, monochrome eyes. He sat, hunched in his seat, barely able to fit even in a vehicle designed for heavily armored knights in full gear. A distant expression made his face seem relaxed beneath the transparent visor extending from the segment of his armor behind his head. Stinger drove and tried not to look at his eerily still companion. A thing like D could make a man lose composure, even if it was his job to make sure the creature succeeded in his mission. He hoped the weapon had not heard that thought. How much longer, Stinger? Said the creature in a thick-sounding voice. Not long, said Stinger. Never driven this way before, but the League has the main road, so it's tough to be certain of our ETA. We must reach the base before it falls. No problem. All part of the plan. Stinger decided not to ask what the monster's motive for arriving in that time frame might be. He could guess. If his troops had to fight just the Macedonians or just the defenders, they would be in real trouble. If the two enemies were fighting each other, the story would be different. Overwhelming UMO forces and retreating could be easy if he stayed out of the League's way. Speed up, came the thought in his mind. Before Stinger knew what he was doing, the vehicle roared from below. He scowled ahead of the road. And yes, I did hear you earlier. Take care, little mercenary. You are here to assist me, not the other way around. Excuse me, said Stinger. Time to put a professional face on, he thought. Weapon D nodded his massive head. He put a huge hand on the console in front of him, and then stood up slowly, taking care in the speeding transport. I must prepare for battle, but have no doubt I will sense everything you think. Good to know, said Stinger, halfway to a grumble. The demon's pallid lips curled. We're almost there. I sense the battle. What do you make of it? It seems like fun, all those ants running and falling. It's smart to respect your opponents in battle. Helps keep you alive. Stinger, I will remember that. The weapon ducked into the troop compartment where Stinger's command team would normally travel. At the moment, the space was mostly occupied by 1,000 pounds of Angel armaments inducers and a pair of aerial drones connected to the demon's optical blade. Usually, drones controlled through a visor went unarmed because of the difficulty in managing them in combat. Of course, Demon won't have much trouble, Stinger thought, thanks to his mental abilities. Imagine what I could do with that kind of talent. He surprised himself at how jealous his thoughts sounded. Better jealous than afraid. Stinger nodded to himself as the walls of forward operating base Mirage grew up ahead. Realization nagged him. He was afraid. So that was the beginning. Well, that's toward the end. That was the kind of ramp to the climax, one of the final scenes before the climax of Cyber Knight, which I originally called Armored Force. Who knows what the title will be when it releases, but Cyber Knight is what we're looking for now. If you're interested in that one, let me know. Military Cyberpunk, and that book's mostly done, or at least mostly rough drafted. I haven't edited it, and it's a little older than some of this other stuff. But here we go. There's one last excerpt, and it is a doozy. It is from Temple Theater, Book 1, The Forgotten Mask, which is epic fantasy with some steampunk elements. Here we go. 9 years ago, in Khosdras, the trophies of fallen giants were used as machines to power the city. 14 years old, Dole began working as a serf in the engine works of southern Khosdras. In the middle of a sweltering summer, a week into the job, he heard of a girl at the end of the street who lived alone. Dole had been watching the steam generator, once a storm giant's heart, belch pale exhaust into the air, when he heard the two men approach. They spoke, voices hushed. He did not want to cut off the conversation, so he hid behind one of the hot pipes beside the machine to listen. One of them was the merchant who owned most of the generators and powered water pumps and drainage gates throughout the district. He spoke in a low voice to an older serf, apparently thinking the two of them were alone, but Dole stayed out of line of sight just within earshot. He strained to listen in over the rumble of the boilers and the grinding of the engine cogs and ticking of the clockwork provided by the priesthood. The merchant complained that the girl had been a tenant at one of his buildings for over a month, but he still did not know how she was able to pay, as she did not appear to work or even leave the building much at all, except to go to eat at the expensive cafes and restaurants up the street. The old serf listened quietly for all of this, but eventually said, "Could be a runaway daughter of the nobility. Would explain the gold." "That's where my mind is gone," said the merchant. "I wagered there's a reward if someone returns her to her family." They went on talking. Curiosity kept Dole listening. A girl with curly black hair, a girl no more than a young teenager, but living alone without any sign of either parent or husband. Though he had grown up surrounded by women where his mother worked, Dole recognized that this one was different because she did not take visitors, or apparently work any other job for that matter. Yet she had money, or the landlord would never have allowed her to stay in his building. To a boy who grew up in a brothel, the money needed to live alone in the city seemed like a fortune. Dole crept away from the engines as the voice of the old serf and the merchant receded. A girl, even one with the money who would help with the landlord and whoever he recruited arrived to catch her. A girl, even one with money, would need help when the landlord and whoever he recruited arrived to catch her. When Dole left the engine works that evening, he turned the opposite way than he usually did on the streets in southern Khosdras. The high walls of the buildings around him hid his shadow, and in the glare from the fading sun. As he walked, he looked around for the girl with curly black hair. Despite his age, he knew appearances could be deceiving. The men who sounded the most uncertain often paid his mother the best, and those who seemed the most confident were often the easiest to swindle. His mother may not have been able to afford him school, but she had educated him the best she could on the way out on the ways of the world. The children who had always made fun of him for his mother when they saw him on the street taught him even more. He had learned to move about unseen when he chose. However, the better way was usually just walking with a kind of confidence in one's position. However weak you actually were. No one questioned Dole despite his hard-worn clothes and thin-soled boots as he made his way down the street. He stopped in front of the gated building owned by the merchant and looked toward the upper levels. He wished he had heard what floor the girl lived on, or considered that the merchant kept a guard at the gate of the building. Because of the guard, he did not risk getting too close. A kind of deferential confidence could keep a passerby from asking him questions, but the guard would assume him a beggar and chase him away, just based on his clothes. Across the street from the gate, Dole watched as the front of the door of the building opened. His stomach rumbled with the call for dinner, which the few coins in his pocket could buy for him if he only abandoned his curiosity. Yet he stayed within view of the gate. A few people in wealthy clothes went through the gate. Another group came out, looked up and down by the guard as they passed. A bit of movement drew his attention to the person behind the group. A shadow of dark hair that looked more like piled up waves than curls bobbed into view over the guard's shoulder. The guard said something, then led her through the gate. He saw the girl. She was skinny, almost boyish, but moved with grace no one knew ever managed. Her clothes were as rich as anyone else that he had seen through around the merchant's building, a gown of blue blending into violet, and her hair was held up by lacy white ties on either side. Her unlined face and the flicker of lighter color from her eyes held his attention. She said something to the guard he could hear from across the street. His stomach roiled. He couldn't hear from across the street. His stomach roiled with clouds, like the ones that usually surrounded the sunken temple in the bay, eager to hear her voice, but his hunger did not bother him anymore. Dole waited for her to leave the gateway and cross the street. She looked both ways, the same way Dole's mother had taught him for safety, but there were no horses or carriages in sight. She walked straight toward him, and the storm in his stomach thundered the same way the giants were supposed to when they fought against the gods in the clouded. He bowed his head to her as was fitting for a serf if she really was nobility. Yet he raised his head quickly, not wanting to miss a moment of her movement. "My lady," he said in a voice as smooth as he could manage, "why are you walking alone?" She raised an eyebrow. "I don't know you, do I?" "Not yet, but you can call me Dole. I'm at your service." "I don't need your service, Dole. Nor serf ice." He smirked at her, halfway between giggling like a child at her joke and trying to stay composed. "You can tell I'm far from rich. That's artful, but you didn't answer my question. Why are you walking alone?" Her lips twitched at the corners. "If you're a serf, why should I tell you?" "Oh, that's easy. You're bored with rich people." "I am? So what?" "Well, if you're bored with them, you can't get any more different than me. So why are you walking alone?" She grinned at him, eyes brightening. "Because you haven't been walking beside me." He laughed out loud. "I know how to fix that." They started down the street together, heading along the street, further and further from the brothel where Dole had grown up, and where he and his mother still lived. The girl glanced at him as they passed street buildings and went over a bridge. They crossed the river just north of where it flowed into the bay. "Call me Min. Is that your name?" It's what you should call me." "You're pretty cautious. We're strangers, Dole, but here we are, walking." "Where were you going?" he asked. "I'm hungry," she said. "Want to eat somewhere nice, Dole?" "That would be a good change." He smiled, though he had not thought about his hunger since he saw Min. "I know a good place or two, and I've got plenty of coin." They reached the center of the bridge, going west. Other people came and went along the broad brick road atop the high arch. Sails towered in the harbor to the south, shining with the rays of the slowly vanishing orange sun. "You know I'm poor." "That's no issue. I'll pay for you." "I hope not too much," he smiled, "except for dinner, that is." She frowned and stopped walking there at the high point of the bridge, wavy hair and smooth face cast in the glow of the setting sun. He walked past her a few steps, then turned and looked back at her. "You seem confident, Dole," she said. "You talk to a lot of girls?" "Never like this," said Dole. "I just happened to hear about you, so I got curious." Her eyes narrowed, dark brows bending. "Who told you about me?" "No one told me. I heard the man who owns your building talking. Seems like he suspects there's a reward for sending you to your family." She looked down at her feet. "I bet there is," she sighed. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't want to scare you away." "I'm not scared now, am I?" I can see that, he grinned. So, do you still want to eat? Do you? Why not? He said. She put a soft hand on his cheek and looked at him evenly, eye to eye, though she was a few inches shorter than him. He felt heat rising in his face. Good point, she smiled, but I guess I can't go back to my building. Do you have anywhere else to go? Not after dinner. He touched her waist tentatively with one hand. I think I can help with that. Don't get ahead of yourself, Dole. She put her hand on his hand, but still, thank you. They ate dishes of savory fish and scallops at one of the restaurants west of the river. After that, they turned toward Dole's favorite public park. Trees with gnarled branches and even more tangled than Min's hair surrounded them. Small blue flowers bloomed along the branches. Is this where you thought we'd stay? She asked. No, he said, but I like this park. I thought if you were a noble, you may never have been here. It's true. My family lives outside Cosrus, north of here. Min, he said, who are you hiding from? My father, she said softly. He wants things for me, from me, things I would rather not let go. He frowned. You don't have to tell me. Thank you, she said, but Dole, if I have to go and you can't follow me, we don't really have to part. What do you mean? He hoped he did not sound as confused as he felt. Just write my name and then any messages you want to send me. I'll know what it says. Min? She shook her head. Use my full name. Makina Kalis. He nodded. Magic, I trust you. They stopped walking. Fading orange sunlight gleamed on the black branches of a broken tree in front of them. A shout came from the edge of the park. There she is. Dole, Min said. Run away. She turned toward the source of the cry. But what about you? I'll be fine. They can't hurt me. She reached into her tunic and pulled out a mask, silver inlaid with blue gems, and able to fully hide her face except for the openings to accommodate her eyes and mouth. Dole's eyes widened. A goddess's mask. Her eyes narrowed. I'll know what you write to me, as long as you don't tell anyone what you say. His legs trembled, and he felt like he should be on his knees. She put on the mask of the goddess, as an avatar would. Angry voices approached through the park. Run, she said. Run away, Dole. She gave him a gentle push. Dole ran, and ran. He ran until he reached the brothel, which he called home. He did not say a word to anyone about meeting the girl. He lied with when his mother asked where he had eaten dinner. But at that very night, he wrote Makina Kalis' name on a scrap of paper, using a bit of coal from the cold fireplace. And he told her he was safe, and they would meet again. And that is the prologue, or first chapter, of The Forgotten Mask. And that's a long one. It was about 10 pages, so 10 pages. So thanks for listening, everybody. This has been Alive After Reading. I'm alive after reading, and it's the holiday season, so everybody stay safe out there. Thanks for listening. You can find my books at mentalcellarpublications.com or amazon.com. You can find more of this podcast at mentalcellarpublications.com and more about me on timniederriter.com. So thanks a lot, folks, and I'll talk to you again next week. Happy holidays.
That tears it.